The morning was quiet, too quiet perhaps, for the bustling life I had grown used to in my small, sunlit kitchen. I was humming softly to myself as I boiled water for tea, the familiar rhythm of my hands stirring memories from decades ago. Memories of a little boy with scraped knees, of school projects carefully taped together, of laughter echoing down these very hallways. My son, my pride, my heart. My phone vibrated against the countertop, startling me. I picked it up, smiling at the thought of him sending a cheerful morning message. Mothers always hope for warmth in the smallest gestures. But the screen that greeted me was not warm. Not at all. Don't come to our house anymore. We want peace. The words struck like a cold hand pressed against my chest. I couldn't breathe at first. My hands trembled slightly as I read it again. Surely I had misunderstood. Perhaps it was a mistake. A text meant for someone else. But no, the name at the top confirmed it. My son, my own flesh and blood. Peace. As if I had been war. I sat down slowly on the edge of the kitchen chair, the kettle still whining on the stove. I tried to grasp what had just happened. I replayed every interaction I could remember. Had I been overbearing? Had I said something wrong? I had always tried to be kind, gentle, and supportive. I had baked his favorite cookies, taken care of the children when he and his wife were busy, and quietly helped him through tough times. And yet, here it was, a cold dismissal delivered in 6 words. I wanted to text back, to explain myself, to plead. But something inside me stopped. A quiet voice whispered, "This is not about you. It is about their choices." So, I didn't reply. Instead, I closed my eyes and let the silence wrap around me. Tears pulled at the corners, but I didn't let them fall. I let myself feel the heartbreak fully, like a wound that needed tending. I remembered the nights I had stayed awake when he was sick, the sacrifices I had made so he could have a better life, the countless ways I had quietly offered love without asking for anything in return. And now I realized that love had been taken for granted or perhaps misunderstood. I typed 3 words in my heart instead of on the screen. I will respect. It was not resignation. It was clarity. It was the first step in understanding that love does not always demand presence, and respect does not always demand agreement. I let the kettle boil over slightly, the steam fogging the window, as if the morning itself had sighed with me. I stayed there for a long time, letting the quiet sink in, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and calm. The message had closed a door, but in that stillness, I understood that perhaps, just perhaps, it had also opened another, a door within myself, one that led to patience, to boundaries, to dignity. I folded my hands in my lap, letting the words settle around me. Peace, I whispered softly, not to him, not to anyone, but to myself. A peace that would not come from their acceptance, but from my own quiet strength. The day after the message passed like a slow-moving shadow. I wakito the sun spilling through my window, the birds singing as if nothing had changed. And yet my world had shifted. The familiar rhythm of morning, tea sweeping the floor, tidying the garden, felt hollow. Each task echoed with the absence of the people I loved most. I didn't reach for my phone that morning. I didn't walk down the street toward their house as I always did, pretending my presence was casual, not longing. I avoided the small wooden bench outside their door, where I used to sit with their children, listening to their laughter as if it were a song written just for me. My absence felt unnatural, but necessary. The silence was worse than the message itself. It hung in the house like smoke, curling into every corner, reminding me that I was no longer welcome. And yet it was more than that. It felt like betrayal, not the obvious, loud kind, but the quiet, insidious kind that seeps into your bones and makes you question every memory, every gesture, every word you had ever spoken. I sat for hours in the living room, watching dust motes dance in the sunlight, trying to remember when things had begun to change. Was it when I had offered advice that wasn't taken? When I had insisted on helping one too many times? Or had it always been there, a fragile tension now broken by a single cold message? I thought of the sacrifices I had made. I had sold my gold bangles to pay for his college fees, stayed awake for nights when he was sick, and defended him when the world doubted him. I had quietly shouldered burdens that weren't mine, hoping to ease his path. And yet that hope had been met with rejection. I baked bread that day as I always did, but didn't send it over. I folded the little sweaters I had wear upon for the grandchildren and put them back in their drawers. I went through old photo albums, my fingers tracing his tiny hands, his first wobbly steps, the school plays where he had proudly waved at me from the stage. Each photo was a reminder of love now overshadowed by distance and misunderstanding. The worst part was not anger. It was not hurt, though there was plenty of that. It was the quiet realization that sometimes people you love deeply will reject you, not because you have done wrong, but because they are not ready to face their own flaws, mistakes, or needs. Sometimes love is not enough to keep a door open. And so I sat in silence. I let the emptiness wash over me. I let the grief seep in without flinching. I let the message sink into my bones. I understood finally that this was a lesson in patience, in dignity, in understanding the weight of boundaries, not just theirs, but my own. By the time the evening came, I was exhausted, but not broken. I folded his old school photos gently into a box, closing a chapter in my heart. I told myself that the silence, painful as it was, had a purpose. It was teaching me to wait, to watch, and to see clearly, not through the lens of longing or fear, but through the quiet, unshakable lens of self-respect. And I knew deep down that the next knock on my door might not bring the apology I longed for, but it would bring clarity. The knock came at dawn, soft, hesitant, a sound that made my heart skip, not with excitement, but with the weight of anticipation. I opened the door slowly, and there he stood, my son, his face drawn, eyes heavy with fatigue and unease. He did not rush in with words of apology or accusations, only a quiet, almost fearful presence that made me realize how fragile pride and guilt can be. He looked at me, searching for something I could not name. I studied him as carefully as he studied me. There were lines on his forehead I hadn't noticed, the faint shadow of sleepless nights and a vulnerability that only life's hard lessons could carve. And in that moment, I understood that people, even those you love most, are complicated, capable of both love and mistakes, both warmth and hurt. He did not speak for a long time. He sat across from me on my old sofa, fingers twisting nervously, his silence echoing the silence I had endured that day before. Finally, he spoke softly, almost reluctantly. "Mom, we're having financial problems. We thought you'd insist on helping again. We wanted space." I didn't know how to say it properly. I listened carefully. My heart, which had been raw and tender from the betrayal, now began to feel something else. Clarity. The message was not entirely about peace. It was about fear, about pride, about avoiding responsibility. They had tried to protect themselves from what they thought I might do without, considering how their words would cut me. And suddenly I understood not just their perspective, but my own. I realized that my love had always been unconditional, perhaps too unconditional, allowing them to take without learning the weight of their own choices. I had been too eager to fix, too quick to forgive. too willing to step over my own boundaries in the name of care. For the first time, I did not feel the need to defend myself. I did not feel the need to cry or to justify my feelings. I looked at my son and spoke with a calmness I hadn't known I possessed. I respected your message. I will respect it again. But understand this. Boundaries go both ways. He blinked, surprised, as if the words themselves were unfamiliar to him. I am your mother, I continued, my voice steady, gentle, but firm. Not your emergency fund, not your emotional storage room. If I am not welcome in your home, I cannot be called only when you are in trouble. Respect is what allows love to thrive. Without it, closeness is impossible. He lowered his gaze, his face pale with the weight of recognition. He understood, even if he could not yet say so. In that quiet living room, I realized that love alone does not guarantee presence, nor does sacrifice guarantee appreciation. What guarantees peace, inner and outer, is respect for oneself and for others. I understood that day that my strength did not come from doing everything for them, but from knowing when to step back, when to wait, and when to let life teach its lessons. And in that understanding, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Calm, not triumph, not victory, but a steady, quiet clarity. The kind that comes from finally seeing the truth, not through longing, not through fear, but through the unwavering lens of dignity. He left that morning without fanfare. No apology, no dramatics, just silence. The door closed behind him and the quiet returned. But it felt different this time. Not heavy, not suffocating, not empty. It felt calm, deliberate, measured. 4 days afterward, I allowed myself to step fully into that calm. I didn't watch the road for his car. I didn't wait by the phone. I stopped baking his favorite bread out of habit. Stopped knitting small gifts for the grandchildren as if absence would teach him something, though part of me admitted that it had. Instead, I turned toward myself. I rose early and took long walks in the crisp morning air, letting the sun warm my face, noticing the way the garden had grown wild in my absence, the flowers leaning toward the light. I drank my tea slowly, savoring each sip, and read books I had long put aside, allowing myself to think my own thoughts, to follow my own rhythm. I spoke to friends I hadn't seen in months, laughing at old jokes, sharing quiet moments that felt entirely mine. At first, there was a small ache, like a soft, persistent drumbeat reminding me of what I had lost. But over time, it softened. The ache turned into clarity. I realized that their absence was not rejection of me but reflection of their own choices. They had created a pattern of convenience and avoidance. They had tested boundaries. They had assumed my love was limitless and my patience infinite. And now finally I understood that true love is not limitless. It is measured, wise, and respectful. Weeks passed and then one evening a message appeared on my phone. Short, hesitant, tentative. Mom, I'm sorry. I handled things wrong. I miss you. I read it slowly, letting each word sink in. I could feel the shift, the quiet acknowledgement of misstep. But I also recognized that words alone were not enough. I did not respond immediately. I sat with the message, feeling the weight of history, of pain, of love that had been stretched to thin. Then I typed carefully, I love you, but respect must come before closeness. When you are ready for that, my door is open. No more, no less. It was not a statement of triumph, not a declaration of victory. It was an affirmation of self-respect, a quiet promise to myself that I would no longer be available only when needed, only when convenient, only when useful. I chose boundaries over desperation, dignity over pleading, and peace over pain. And in that choice, I found something remarkable. Freedom. Freedom from waiting. Freedom from hurt. Freedom from the constant anxiety of being unwanted or taken for granted. The peace I felt was not external. It was internal. I no longer needed approval, validation, or recognition. I only needed the quiet strength that had grown inside me. The kind of strength that comes from enduring, observing, and choosing wisely. I realized finally that love is not about sacrificing oneself endlessly. Love at its best is about balance. And sometimes the most loving act is to step back, to hold firm to your own heart, and to allow others to live with the consequences of their choices. That evening, I poured myself a cup of tea, watched the sunset spill gold across the horizon, and smiled quietly. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace. Not because anyone else had changed, but because I had chosen myself.